Pharr.
Dear Father God, we come together this day to seek your wisdom, guidance, courage, and strength. Help us to make wise decisions for the good of all those who have placed their trust and confidence in our leadership. Amen.
So go ahead and call the meeting to order. So we got a workshop this morning.
Yes, sir. Chairman, Directors, the first item on your agenda is, on the workshop, is item 1, is the review of fiscal year 2019 financial statement and independent auditor's report for the Hidalgo County Regional Mobility Authority. We have Luis here with Burton McCumber, and he's going to make a brief presentation to the board.
Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Like Pilar mentioned, my name is Luis Lopez. I'm an audit manager with Burton McCumber and Longoria. And I'm here today to present to you the audit report for the year ended December 31st, 2019. We did meet with management, I believe last Thursday, so we've already gone through this information. I mean to keep it brief in light of all this. So my intent here is just to highlight a few points, not necessarily go through everything. And so that's what I'll do. Included in your audit report, there should be two letters included in the packet. I want to go over first the one that does not have the firm signature at the bottom, the one that has text all the way through to the bottom.
Luis, they have March 24th and March 4th is the probably
Okay.
way to refer to them.
Right, okay, the March 24th. This letter includes required communication that we're required to communicate as part of our responsibilities under generally accepted auditing standards. This communication here is in writing. I'm just going to highlight 2-3 brief points. The first being that the audit was conducted in accordance with government auditing standards. These financial statements, as any other financial statements, include certain estimates incorporated in them. And that's an example that could be an estimate for an allowance for uncollectible accounts, the useful lives on capital assets, and so just acknowledging, highlighting the fact that there are some estimates included in the financial statements. We did not have any difficulties in completing the audit. Staff is always very helpful and very proactive in providing information to us. As far as, there were some adjustments posted during the audit process. Some came from management, some came from us. There was one immaterial adjustment that was passed on. That does not affect our opinion on the financial statements, and that adjustment is included on the third page to this packet. We had no disagreements with management during the course of the audit. Sometimes there are some disagreements as to the interpretation of an accounting policy or rule, and so none of that happened. We did get a management representation letter dated March 4th, and as far as we know, that there weren't any consultations with other accountants, again, to see if there were any disagreements as far as the interpretation of any accounting policies. That's all that I will highlight in this first letter, and I'll jump right straight into the audit report. If you turn to page 5, which is it doesn't have a page number at the bottom, but it is on our letterhead. This is the audit report. Actually, page 6, just give me a second. The opinion that we had was, it's an unmodified opinion, a clean opinion, which is consistent with prior years. So no deviation from the prior years. And jumping straight into if you turn to page 13, the statement of revenues, of expenses, and and changes in net assets. Everything's pretty consistent with the prior year as far as operations and costs. The one item that I would highlight that is different, and I will only highlight it because it is different than the prior year, is halfway through the page, there's an item called right-of-way conveyed, and it's 1.8 million. What that was as some right-of-way was transferred over to TxDOT because as part of the funding agreement, and they are now responsible for maintaining that right-of-way. And so that 1.8 million is the only thing that I would highlight that is different in comparing these financial statements with the prior year. Net position increased by 1.2 million. This is smaller than the increase is smaller than in the prior year. Again, because of that 1.8 decrease where that asset was removed from the books. Excluding that 1.8 million, the net change would have been fairly comparable with the prior year. It would have been last year would have been 3.5 million. This year would have been 3.1 million. And so, for the most part, it compares pretty reasonably with the prior year.
Can I ask you a question on that one? Was any debt up here with that 1.8 that we transferred to TxDOT? Or we were just funded?
That, yes, there was debt that we incurred as part of the Series 2013.
Do we still have that debt?
Yes, sir.
On our books?
Yes, sir, we do. We use those funds, those proceeds, the Series 2013 vehicle registration fees, to pay for that right-of-way, and that was our contribution to the US 281 BSIF connector project, military highway overpass.
The $20 million?
Yes, and so TxDOT paid for construction, but our contribution was the design and the right-of-way.
So that's
That,
yes. Sorry to.
No problem. Like I mentioned, everything else, the notes are pretty consistent with the prior year. There's no significant deviations that I would significantly highlight. We did add a subsequent event disclosure in light of everything that is going on with the COVID-19, just acknowledging the fact that there is some uncertainty in terms of what effects it may have on vendors, contractors, employees, lending institutions, and so on. And so that's pretty much all I have. We did not have any findings that rise to the level of a significant deficiency or material weakness. We did have one recommendation to management, which is included in the other letter that we didn't go over. And so we've discussed that with management, and they're working on addressing that recommendation.
We can update that, I guess, from the staff. As far as timing we're spending on those projects, so we're just gonna update how much time is recorded, is that correct?
yes, sir, and so part of the challenge that we had in the 2019 fiscal year is we had very slow progress. We had no construction, and most of our effort was on project development. And so in prior years, we had construction, so it was very easy to assign the staff's time. And so that, but what Burton McCumber Longoria is recommending, that we have a more analytical process to assign the staff's time to either construction or project development so that we can capitalize it. So.
If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer. If not, that's all I have for today.
If there are no other questions on the audit from anyone?
No.
We good? Forrest, you okay with it? Rick?
Yes, sir.
Alonzo? Paul?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
Chairman, I think we had somebody join the meeting, maybe Director Gandu.
Alonzo, are you on the line?
Yeah.
Okay. We got a full phone.
Chairman, Directors, the next item on your workshop agenda is item 2. It's review of the fiscal year 2019 annual compliance report for the Hidalgo County Regional Mobility Authority. If you look in your packet, it's workshop item number 2. If you'll go to, it's a one-page table, and it's titled Hidalgo County Regional Mobility Authority Compliance Report. It's required under Texas Administrative Code Title 43, Part I, Chapter 26, Subchapter G, Section 26.65A, Annual Reports to the Commission. It's got 3 columns. The left column says Compliance Rule, the center column says Compliance Statement, and then the third column says Certification. And so this is a report that we're required to submit to TxDOT annually. And so our compliance is we're in compliance with all the items that they're requiring. There's a couple that are not applicable, which is the second row from the top. It says any financial information and notices of material events required to be disclosed under Rule 15C2-12 of the SEC. That's not applicable. And then the next row, row number 3, it says to the extent not disclosed in another report required in this compliance report, a statement of any surplus revenue held by the RMA and a summary of how it intends to use the surplus revenue. That's not applicable because we have no revenue. All the other compliance items or rules we are in compliance with. This will be an action item on your regular agenda for the board to certify that we are in compliance, and then we can submit it to TxDOT.
Any questions?
No, very good.
Chairman, Directors, the next item in your workshop is item 3, is a presentation of the update on the West Loop project, and Eric will give you an update on that.
Good afternoon. If you go to workshop item 3, you go to the slideshow, slide number 2, there's a map of the West Loop. And the request was to come in and give an update on the status of this project. I think it's important to first cover how we got to West Loop in the first place. Early in 2019, City of Mission approached several local stakeholders, but more specifically the RMA, to include the Madero Rail project on local plans. The mandate essentially came from their conversations with federal government about maintaining their presidential permit active while they continue to work on developing the proposed rail project about Madero Rail. So the West Loop had some very high-level development work take place in 2013, late 2012, early 2013, with regard to utilizing Section 8 West and Section C of the long-range plan of the HCRMA system as a potential route to capture the rail. You see there's an exhibit with a label called Section 8 West in red. There's a dotted box. Within that dotted box, there's a blow-up of it just to the right of it showing a proposed bridge crossing done by others. The assumption was always here that City of Mission would be leading the way on developing that crossing, whether it was Bridgeboard or Mission. It was to be done by others. And as you can see, with the way it ties into the tail end of 365 Tollway, it would immediately give a benefit to 365 Toll Segment 4. It would give it a destination point, and therefore that makes that segment of the project a lot more viable from a construction standpoint. It already has environmental clearance and a lot of stakeholder coordination with the large landowners in that area. And so that has a lot going for that particular section. But then once you have let's say, potential switch yard in that location, you need a route through and around the county. So the Section 8 West and Section C naturally lend themselves as a potential route to take that rail around the county. So that proposed route for the RMA is called the West Loop. It was incorporated into our short-term strategic plan, which was updated in April of 2019. So that segment of project is a proposed project length of about 38 miles. It is slated in our long-range plan as a project of this size would probably warrant a longer environmental process. As mentioned, it would also require, in part, the feasibility of that rail bridge to come to fruition or to come to some level of certainty so that we could then incorporate the proposed rail component inside of that corridor that we would then environmentally clear. So with that being said, last year, early this year, as evidenced by several agenda items, we had a interlocal agreement crafted to essentially lend support to City of Mission with regard to environmental clearance and with potential right-of-way purchase in the future, as that would be a key component to try to get the rail project through the county, through the Section C and Section A West linkages of our system map. If you go to page number 3, from the high-level planning work that was done, crossing the Madero Rail Bridge through the Hidalgo County there on the bottom of the panel A is essentially the easier part. The RMA projects are kind of a known quantity. It would just require going to the public. And yes, while the environmental process might be lengthy and it's a big corridor, there is a lot of interest in seeing this project through, not just by this agency, but by a lot of other stakeholders. And so the question becomes, how do you route a potential rail line out of the county? And so there's 3 proposed study routes that were looked at a very preliminary level. One essentially peels off to the west in blue, study route number 1. That's somewhat northwest of Moore Airfield Base, which would then go link into Hebronville, where you have a part of the rail that's owned by Kansas City Southern that connects in that location. That rail, like a lot of other rail linkages, depart from Laredo in the west as they're traversing through the state, South Texas, as they make their way onto like Alice and other points, to Houston and so on. The other routes that were looked at was route number 2 in red. It's kind of overlapped in the green, study route number 3, which would utilize some of the I-69 Central, US 281 abandoned rail right-of-way. Part of the feasibility would look at what it would take to recover, reactivate, or reacquire in some cases, because once it used to be, back when it was rail right-of-way, it reverts back to landowners and the land use change. So there'd be a lot of what ifs that would play out along that corridor, but there was once an established corridor. But unfortunately, development, utilities, all that would become a challenge, but it'd be something worth looking at. That route would hook to the west, somewhere in Brooks County, and hook back into Hebronville. And study route number 3 essentially took I-69 all the way and along I-69C to a point where you could then connect into Alice. And so those were the 3 very high-level looks at routes for that potential rail component. And in slide number 4, we simply have a conceptual cross-section. Essentially, the rail right-of-way would be about 125 feet in the center of a proposed toll road, essentially. You have examples of this over in the Harvey Toll Road, Harris County area, where essentially toll projects and rail would coexist. This project, not just being having its challenges for it being a toll project and a project of this magnitude, you would also, obviously, with the need and purpose to connect the south of Hidalgo County to the north, you have the additional challenges of financing the rail component. And so it would be key to develop the project to a point where we can get industry partners to partner up to essentially develop the rail component on their nickel while we develop the toll road like we would normally. And so the cost to the RMA would be a net zero cost, but it'd be one that's worth signaling to industry and interested partners so that they understand what we will bring to the table, which would be acquiring the right-of-way and environmental clearance, getting them around through Hidalgo County while partners in Mission attack the question of rail crossing in Madero. So we had a kickoff to the interlocal agreement that was crafted between RMA and City of Mission. Very preliminary stages, but we have some marching orders on what they need assist with at the moment. We'll definitely keep reporting more as things develop in the PM report and provide updates, and that way we can bring back that to the public and the directors for any additional questions. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. That's how we got to here. Are there any questions about this workshop item?
Any questions?
No. That's your thanks.
Thank you, sir. Chairman, if you could call the meeting to order and then ask for a roll call on the
Okay, we're done with the adjournment of the workshop. I'd like to go ahead and call the meeting to order. Mr. Reynolds, are you present?
Yes.
Mr. Cantu?
Yes.
Mr. Moxley?
Yes.
Mr. Bravo? And Mr. Dana?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Chairman Directors, the first item is public comment, and we have no one signed up for public comment. So moving on to item 1A, report on program manager activity for 365 tollway project and the IBTC environmental clearance document. Eric Davila will give a brief report.
Good afternoon once again. On the PM report, item 1A, we go to slide number 4, which is the road to 2021 UTP. As some of y'all may have heard or may have participated in the WebEx conference call with TxDOT, DPP, they essentially unveiled a 2020 UTP revision call that was that came out, and obviously it stirred a lot of curiosity as to why a revision so close to the 2021 UTP proposed adoption, which will take place around the August time of this year. And so we listened in on that call, and essentially the proposed revision on the table was to basically fund I-35. And so it was really the only change from a local funding standpoint was there was no change to any of the proposed projects that the RMA is continually working on. But with obviously that much money being programmed for such an expensive project, naturally people wanted more time, because that was around the time where certain local governments trying to shut down, and we have the coronavirus protocols taking place. So there has been a request to extend public comment, and I know that there was letters by the legislature written to TxDOT to consider, or the TxDOT Commission to consider either postponing, delaying, essentially modifying the public involvement process for this proposed 2020 revision. But as of now, the proposed revision as published doesn't seem to impact any of the proposed funding for the projects that we have now. As an aside, now you've got, once we get through this public comment period, you have 2021 PCP. And so we continue to keep an eye on those developments as at some point, TxDOT will have to take a 2021 UTP plan back out to the public. And so we'll anticipate that we continue to move forward to the gap funding, that there's local commitments to obtain in this plan, which will allow us to then continue on with the project. We've met with our local Pharr district and have provided them sort of our best case, worst case schedule scenario. Now that we know that it's working toward an August decision, we have a better fixed schedule, which we will be updating in our next report. So all that is in progress at this time, and we look forward to providing more information at the next meeting. Any questions on 365? Okay. And on IBTC, we continue to move forward on environmental. One of the interesting things about environmental is that a lot of the roads go from Pharr district to Austin, and both locations essentially at this point at TxDOT are working remotely. So we're taking those measures to contact them and work with them in their remote work mode to try to continue to push forward on the two resources that are kind of left for review at this point. Is going to be the noise study and our archaeological mitigation. So not a whole lot has changed. Hopefully once we pin down some of these key meetings to move forward on those resources, we'll have a clear idea of when we think we'll have a public hearing and in what manner we'll hold it. Because public meetings are obviously taking a slightly different look these days. And so
initially we had said we'd be done with the environmental by March, so we're going to push it out to June.
yes. And that's just, given the additional resources that have come up. We had some items that had to go up for approval on redoing the noise study. Essentially, we've had a lot of really good feedback from the state, TPMP, the traffic section, essentially approved the traffic, and so there were some changes that required. And so that we hope that we make up some of that time. But like I mentioned, with these COVID-19 protocols, we'll continue to work with the state and continue to move forward on the project. Any questions?
Any questions? from anyone?
No.
Chairman, Directors, the next item on your agenda is item 2, the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered to be routine by the governing body and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items. However, if discussion is desired, that item or items will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately.
Can I get a motion for approval of the consent agenda?
So move.
So moved.
Is that you, Frank?
Yes. Second box.
Second by Mox.
Chairman, would ask that you ask for a record of the vote.
Okay, so, Forrest, could I get you to approve this, please?
Yes, approved.
Okay, Rick, so you're approved. Alonso, can I get your approval?
Sure.
And Zeke, can I get your approval?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all approved.
Chairman, Director, the next item on your agenda is item 3A, Resolution 2020-04, approval of fiscal year 2019 financial statement and independent auditor's report for the Hidalgo County Regional Mobility Authority. We had a report on that, or a review on that by Luis Lopez with Member Lagoya. Staff is recommending approval of the auditor's report.
Can I get a motion for the approval of the 2020 fiscal year 2019 financial statement audit?
So moved.
Second by Alonso, second by Rick. Forrest, I'm gonna need your vote again.
Yes, sir. I approve.
Mox? Approval?
You got it.
Frank?
Yep.
And Zeke?
Yes.
Thank you.
Item 3B, Resolution 2020-05, approval of the 2019 annual compliance report for the Hidalgo County Regional Mobility Authority. Staff recommends approval of the compliance report as presented.
Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Mox? That's Forrest. Can I get a second?
Yes.
Mox? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I guess we gotta go to the
Aye.
record, right? Same thing?
Yes, sir. We need a
Zeke?
record of the vote.
Zeke, I need your record.
Yes.
Mox?
Yes. Yes.
Forrest? And Alonso?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
And then item 3C, Resolution 2020-09, authorization to solicit requests for qualifications for engineering, construction material testing, surveying, subsurface utility engineering, geotechnical engineering, and other engineering-related services for the Hidalgo County Regional Mobility Authority for the International Bridge Trade Corridor Project. Chairman, Directors, back on December 10th of 2014, we issued a stop work notice on the IBTC project. And so we have not had activity on that as far as the design is concerned in over 5 years. Since then, the authority has adopted new procurement rules that are in compliance with the state and federal requirements for procurement of professional services. And so we'd like authorization to re-procure all of these services for the IBTC project. And the reason we'd like to do that is because under the old procurement rules, we are not eligible for reimbursement from TxDOT if it were to become available, because at the time our procurement rules were not in compliance. They are now in compliance, and so we'd like to re-procure these services, and so that if TxDOT funds do become available to reimburse us for these services, then we'll be eligible. And then number 2 is that we have not had any activity in over 5 years, and so the work is kind of, I won't say it's gone stale, but we have not had any activity. So the intent is we re-procure professional services, and then we take the work that we did do, give it to the new engineers or whatever surveyors, and then take off from there. So we wouldn't lose the value of any of the work we did perform, and they would just pick up and basically finish up the work. Yeah, where they left off and finish up the work. So staff is recommending approval.
Can I get a motion for the 2020-09 to solicit for qualifications for engineering and procurement?
So moved by Zeke.
Moved
Second,
by
Mox.
Zeke, second Mox. Alonso, approval?
Yes, sir.
Rick
Yes.
and Forrest?
Yes.
And Frank?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All, everyone's in favor and those opposed, same sign, motion carries. So now we move into the election of,
Yeah, item 4A, Chairman, is annual election of the Vice Chairman and Secretary Treasurer for the Dow County Regional Mobility Authority Board of Directors. So, Directors and Chairman, if you recall, the Chairman is appointed by the Governor. However, the Vice Chairman, the Secretary, and the Treasurer are elected by the members of the Board. The Secretary and Treasurer and the bylaws are two separate positions, but the bylaws do allow them to be combined into one position, and so historically the board has done that. And so annually it's required that you re-elect the chairman and the vice chairman, the secretary treasurer, excuse me, the vice chairman and the secretary treasurer. And so currently Director Reynolds is serving as vice chair and Director Bettis is serving as the secretary treasurer.
so I'd like to open the nomination, floor for nominations.
I do a nomination to elect Forrest Reynolds for vice chair.
Forrest Reynolds as vice chair. Forrest? Anybody else?
Yes, sir. Just leave it alone like it is.
Okay, so we leave Forrest as vice chair. Can I get a vote for, I guess, close nominations, and Forrest, do you accept?
Yes.
Okay, so let's get an approval. So Zeke, you okay with that?
Yes, sir.
Frank, you okay with that?
Yes, sir.
Moxie already motioned. Alonso, you okay with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Forrest, you okay with that? And Rick's okay with it, so.
Yes.
Let it be known, show the record reflect that Forrest will also been re-elected as vice chairman for the board. And then for secretary treasurer,
Director Bettis is currently serving as the secretary treasurer. So.
any nominations?
Move we leave him in place.
Okay, leave him in place? Yeah, so like Forrest, you okay with that? Alonso, you okay with that? Mox?
Yes.
Kyle?
Yeah.
And Zeke?
I approve, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So let the nomination show that he's vice chair. Let the vice chair. Is there anything?
Secretary treasurer. So Chairman, Directors, we have no further business for the board to consider.
Okay, at this time, there is no information. So all in favor, can I get a motion to close the meeting?
Motion. Second.
Motion second, all in favor, say aye. Guess everybody,
Unknown person is now exiting.
okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Chairman, Directors.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Be safe.
Thank you.